Welcome to Smarketing for Marketers' first episode, where we talk to marketing professionals from diverse industry backgrounds and get their take on the latest and greatest in marketing. Today's guest is Eva Frederick from Whitehead Institute. Eva is a science communication officer and webmaster at Whitehead Institute, which is a world-renowned nonprofit research institution dedicated to improving human health through basic biomedical research. She holds a bachelor's degree in biology and journalism from the University of Texas at Austin and a master's in science writing from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So, Eva, thank you again for joining me today. Tell me more about your job role at Whitehead Institute.
Thanks so much for having me, Vidushi. I'm happy to be here. Like you mentioned, my job at Whitehead Institute is Science Communication Officer and Webmaster. So it's split about 50-50 between writing news releases, writing features, and other online content for our website, and then keeping that website up to date. So I'll be posting things, I'll be updating content that's on there about our giving site or our administration, things like that.
Interesting. I know that internet has transformed how we create and disseminate content in general. So what are the new ways of communicating scientific content that you are deploying at your organization?
Right, that's a good question. So like I mentioned, we cover all the papers that come out of our institute, and we like to post them on social media. And I think that's a really useful tool for reaching a more general audience. We also have events and talks, webinars that we disseminate out to the community, and that kind of gets the conversation going. We have dialogues with our director on topics in the scientific community. And then we also work within communications on creating series that tie together a lot of disparate projects that are on kind of similar topics across the Institute.
That's interesting, and I kind of get from what you're saying that you're leveraging diverse content formats to get to the right audience. So that's really interesting. That's a nice segue into my next question to you. From writing scientific content to being a webmaster at Whitehead, was it a natural extension of your current job role, or was it a skill set you acquired over the years?
Right. So I do have some previous experience. When I was in college, I worked for my school newspaper, and I would post content to the website there. So I'd already had some webmaster experience and some experience working with Drupal, but it was a few years ago. And so when I started working at this job, there was a learning curve trying to figure out how best to display the content. And right after I started, we moved all of our content from our old website, redid the website, moved it to a new site. And so that was kind of a crash course in working with our new site. I had to pretty much reformat all of the news stories, make sure they all had images, and figure out the best way to display all the other sections of our site. So it was a learning curve, but it was definitely manageable.
So you recently updated your both back end and front end of your site. Can you just elaborate on how it helped your day-to-day job at Whitehead?
Definitely. The update made my job a lot easier. It's a lot more intuitive to post content on the back end. There's many different formats that we can use. So previously with our old site, we were basically just embedding all the images in HTML or embedding all the videos within the text. And now we have these preset modules that we can use to display images in very engaging ways that flow with the news story or whatever page you're working on. So you can display images side by side. You can have a slideshow, like a gallery. We actually have this cool one called Image Slider, where you can have, like, if two images are similar and you're trying to show a time lapse, you can use that to convey that, which I think is a really specific application, but it's really useful sometimes. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that our content can now be more engaging now that we have more capability for showcasing different types of media.
So you mentioned about Drupal. So I know that Drupal recently upgraded to Drupal 9. Can you touch on, like, what are the benefits you're seeing on Drupal 9 versus the older version of Drupal that you were leveraging at Whitehead?
Right. I guess between Drupal 9 and Drupal 8, the last update, I think it's it was a pretty smooth transition, just because that was while we had our new site. I'm not sure what version we were using on the old site, but since then, it's been a lot more intuitive. Everything on the back end is very smooth for me, and it's like pretty self-explanatory.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's always a welcome, right? When you can collaborate on the back end. In terms of, like, this is a question more so for marketers who are listening to us right now. If they're on the fence of using content management system like Drupal, what would you say to them? And how would you be able to kind of sell Drupal 9 to that
Right.
audience?
I would say it gives you a lot of flexibility for how you want to display your content and a lot of potential for interactive things. We have a lot of one of our recent projects is we do this like grid of videos where you can click on each video and it's like 1 minute long and you can hear from different researchers. And I think things like that weren't possible with our old website, but now it's like very easy to do that stuff. And I think that's like a different way of engaging our audience, which is always fun. It's very easy to try things. And it looks great on social media, I will say. I'm not sure if that's a Drupal thing or not, but
That's awesome. I mean, again, recently Google's algorithm talked about, content layout, and diverse content format is an important parameter when they're looking at your site to rank for on Google. So that's key. So that's nice to know that, it allows you to do so much on the back end. Just kind of going back into your, metrics. So as a scientific communication writer, what kind of metrics that you go for, whether social sharing, a number of social shares are important to you, or it's the traditional metrics like the altometric score, where you look at the citations you get from a piece, a journal that you wrote, or a scientific paper you wrote. So can you touch on that?
Right. I think a lot of the different metrics are important to us for different reasons. So, for example, social media can kind of help us check the pulse of our general audience and see what they're interested in, what is very engaging. And then we are interested in what keywords people are searching and what stories of ours are getting a lot of hits. I guess on my side, we're not really looking at the citations. That's more of the researchers, I would say. But we're also interested in the links, that like what people are linking to our site. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what we like to look at.
That's
What
interesting.
stories are doing particularly well compared to others, and then we try to think about why that might be happening.
I know you talked about, targeting journalists and media professionals through your scientific right content. What about the on the other end of the spectrum, other people who are maybe not too familiar with scientific languages? How are you trying to kind of bridge the gap and promote your content to that audience?
Right. I think our social media plays a big part in that. We're definitely focusing on engaging images, things that will make people want to click on things. And then when we write, we try to write for a general audience. So like we say science informed, but not maybe not up to speed on exactly what the paper is on. So we try to keep it pretty general. And then we also have different types of content that we like to do. So like I said, we have different series. We have podcasts in case people are interested in hearing directly from the researchers and listening or taking in the content that way. We have videos that we do on research highlights. So our series are aimed at people with varying levels of scientific literacy. So some of them are, I guess we have within a series, we'll have some content like that, like I was talking about before. We had this cartoon explainer where it's basically, we picked a topic. So the topic of the series was RNA research, and that's a pretty dense topic. And so we found a way to work with an illustrator to create a little cartoon so that people who maybe aren't up to speed on all the different types of RNA, what they do in the cells, things like that, they can kind of have a crash course in RNA biology before they dive into the rest of the series. So that's one way we're trying to reach various audiences.
That's awesome. So tell me a little more about your public programs that you may have going at Whitehead, that you touch maybe schools and universities in that area.
Right. So we have a number of public programs. We have, well, first of all, on our website, after the pandemic hit and kids were staying home from school, we communications got together and brainstormed how we could kind of provide resources for teachers who are looking for things to send to their students to do at home. And so we created a site called BioNook, which aggregates some of our content that's aimed more at maybe a high school or junior high level audience. We aggregated it all there. And so students can go in and look at maybe different videos. Like we have a dissection video that we recently posted of a planarian worm, which is really cool because if you cut them in half, they grow into 2 worms. things like that are really fun.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we also kind of bring together some outside content and provide it there. So we have links to like safari or wildlife cams, and then little activities you can do, citizen science initiatives that students can get involved with. So we try to have like a variety of things people can interact with on BioNook. So that's a great way that we reach students. Besides that, we have actual program, like structured programs. So we have one for high school students where they attend lectures. We have a seminar series for high school teachers. So that's kind of to reach teachers in the area and talk to them about what's on the cutting edge of science right now. And then we have Expedition Bio, which I think is for junior high students. Generally, they're in person, but recently, obviously, everything's been remote. So we've been trying
That
to
makes
figure out
sense.
to reach students and make a fun, engaging program on Zoom, which I think has been going really well.
That's awesome. So, how do you like when you look at a content? I mean, what kind of goes into the planning process? Do you look at keyword analysis to make sure that it's in sync with what people are searching on Google, and also the fact that you touch so many different audiences? How do you make sure that the content kind of like touches all these people? Because it might, it might you might focus on just one journalist and media professionals, but that content might be beneficial for other audiences as well. How do you kind of like go through the planning process, I guess, strategy?
Right. I think it depends on the type of content. Like with a press release, it depends on what that story is covering. Because sometimes they'll be very, very specific and niche papers. And so we might aim those more at a specific scientific community who's interested in that. Whereas if we're trying to do a general interest series on like, we have one upcoming on metabolism. So for that one, we're trying to think of ways that, people out there might be who aren't studying these specific aspects of metabolism. We can draw them into our research and get them interested. Yeah, and then we also work a lot with multimedia. So, like I said, so we try to have podcasts and videos and different things that people can click around in, slideshows. We like to have funny illustrations because I think that's always like
That's
if you
always
have
a
like
winner.
or yeah, that's like that's really useful.
They say right picture tells 1,000 words.
Right,
It
right, and we
comes
always
to
like to have like a quirky take on the image. I think we don't want to look like just any like we're just using any stock image that we can find on Google. We like to have something kind of specific to us.
interesting. And just my last question to you on this. As a scientific writer, what are the tools that you're leveraging on your day-to-day job? You touched on, the content management system because you work closely on your website, but what are the other tools that you are actively using to kind of make your job more easy and more productive? I guess.
Do you mean like related to the website or just in general?
Just in general, any kind of marketing tools or any kind of maybe even like Google Analytics to look at metrics? Are you
Oh
leveraging any
yeah.
kind of tools like that to gauge the performance of your content and the reach you're getting out of it?
Right. Yeah, we use Google Analytics, and that's really helpful. There's that one chart on Google Analytics where you can see how people are accessing or what page they enter your site on, and then how they're dropping off or whether they're going to other sites. I think that's really useful. We have one story that is like very, very good. A lot of people visit it, but then a lot of them drop off. And so we've been analyzing that. Like, why are they doing that? Is there any way we can keep some of that traffic, or like, is that just a factor of what type of content it is? It's a press release, so maybe they just read what they want to read and then they leave. So yeah, that's really useful for us. I think that's
Yes, Hrefs is another social like Google Analytics tool that we leverage in-house to make sure we're able to capture like what the latest and greatest is and when it comes to keyword analysis and just competitor analysis.
right. Yeah, the data from that's always pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again for your time. This was really interesting, and it opens up a new world, at least from my perspective, because I've never touched a scientific audience. So the fact that you're reaching a broader, diverse audience from like younger to journalists and media professionals, and of course the content ad format piece. I think you're trying to really humanize science in a way. So that's very interesting. Thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Piyushi.